Anxiety and ADHD. How do you tell if any defiant or angry or oppositional behaviors are actually related to anxiety? And I'm really excited to have Dr. Erina White here today. And I am Veronica, hostess of ADHD What Now? I'm a mom to a child with ADHD, and it took 4 years to figure out what was important. And I don't want it to take 4 years for you. So now I partner with parents and professionals to help people see their next steps beyond overwhelm and information overwhelm. So Dr. Erina White is here, and I saw an article of hers on Attitude Magazine and really enjoyed everything she had to say about anxiety, especially where she said that therapists, parents, and educators know that this comorbidity exists, but few really understand what it means and how it manifests and how to respond when it does. So I wanted to invite her to share that really important message here with you today. So welcome, and it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. In your article, Understanding the Role of Anxiety in Children with ADHD, you said there's two types of anxiety for kids with ADHD, and it's important that people be aware of this. So what is that all about?
Yeah, so I think, there are many, many ways, many types of anxiety, but I think for parents, it can be helpful to think about anxiety in two ways, because I think often we think about anxiety just as the kid that doesn't want to do something or the kid that's crying and afraid. Um, but there is another kind of anxiety. So there's internalizing anxiety, which is the one that I'm sort of referring to, which is pretty obvious, like I crying in the corner, I'm afraid, I don't want to go here, I don't want to do this. And then there's the externalizing anxiety, which is much more difficult to diagnose and see, and it usually looks like anger or opposition, or I think some parents call it stubbornness, or my kid is bad, or they just don't want to do what I want them to do, or lazy, or procrastinating. And I think what's tricky about that is that it sort of can almost, for a kid with ADHD, perpetuate that cycle of shame. So if parents and providers don't see that what's really happening is that they're upset about something, and they're afraid about something, or they're worried about something, and they see it instead as them being a bad kid, that message makes the kid feel worse about themselves, which then drives that sort of oppositional anxiety even more. So I think it's just important for parents and providers, therapists, teachers, folks who work with kids to kind of recognize that sometimes when you see a kid act out, it's not just opposition, it's because they're afraid of something or they're worried about something.
So have you come up with then in your practice, is there either a process or something that you look for that helps you to identify when that's really what is going on behind the behaviors? Is that they're being driven by anxiety?
Yeah, so it really depends on where the kid is at developmentally. So I see a lot of teens and college age kids right now. So with them, it's a little bit different, because they're sort of a little more able to say, I feel this, so this and this comes out this way. Um, for the littles, kind of more where you're at, where some of your members are at, what I try to think about myself and encourage parents to do is to ask why. Like every time you see a behavior, to try real hard, which is hard as a parent, but try real hard not to get triggered by it, and instead think for a second, like take a breath and think, where might this be coming from? Like, did my kid eat? Are they hungry? Did they play too hard? Is this right after school? Did something bad happen at school? If it's right before school, is there something they're scared about before school? And to just sort of really step back for a second and think before you immediately go to the label of they're just being a brat today, or they're being bad. And then the more you do that as a parent, the more that you start to teach your littles to do that as well. Like, stop, think, what's driving this? Why might my kid be reacting right now? Maybe they're afraid. Maybe they're worried. Maybe it's not because they just want to be a bit of a brat.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the things that you've heard that the kids say too that will help to identify that?
Yeah. So this is also really developmentally dependent. So for the littles, um, they I try to break it down into 3 steps, and I try to teach them. And I think this is something that parents can do really easily, even at a very early age. When a behavior or a big emotion happens, um, I think about the first step is to acknowledge that a behavior is happening, that a big emotion is happening. The second step is to figure out where it's coming from. And then the third step is, what am I going to do about it? And I think once you break that down, um, it becomes a lot easier to say, wow, this isn't, my kid's not a bad kid. My kid's not being oppositional. There's a reason for every emotion. Um, with the older kids, what I hear from them is that, and this I think does happen a little bit with the littles too, especially when it comes to school. And I think school is a big trigger for a lot of kids right this time of year. Um, what I hear is that when you have ADHD or you have some learning difficulties, at a really, really young age, you realize that you're different. And that is really scary and it feels really crappy. And then you get into this cycle of thinking that there's something wrong with you. And then every time you do something, it's maybe harder for you than it is for somebody else, maybe takes longer, maybe you don't do as well. And so you create this narrative about yourself as a kid, as just not being as good. And then that narrative is so strong that even thinking about starting to do work, you think about that. So your anxiety becomes, I don't even want to start. For the rest of us who don't have that, we have a big problem, a big project. We got to go do a math test. Even for littles, we've got to start a new reading book. For the rest of us, we just go, maybe we don't want to do it. Or maybe this is a little bit hard, or, I'd rather watch TV. But for a kid with some learning difficulties or ADHD, that's not their narrative. Their narrative is, I'm so awful. I'm going to do so bad on this. This is going to be so hard for me that just getting through that before they even start the work is incredibly anxiety provoking. And it's like climbing Mount Everest for that kid. And so when you as an adult see them not do it, resist, what you want to try to think about is, this is what they're doing. Like, they're having to walk through this like awful, awful feeling before they even get to the task. And so the more as a parent, you can just start to think in advance, like, when my kid is acting this way, why might they be acting this way? Like, what kinds of feelings, what kind of tasks, what might be going on in their mind that I'm not aware of because I don't have the same challenges they have. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's what I work on a lot with the parents that I work with, and it's what I work on a lot with the kids too. So with the kids, the older kids, we call it like, I don't have a procrastination problem. I have an emotional regulation problem. My problem is dealing with the anxiety and the feelings that I have about doing something, not about doing it. And so with parents, what I work on with them is, look, your kid isn't lazy. Your kid's battling emotions that you can't even imagine. What can you do to support that?
So then you said that you help them to think through what happens, what's going on before, right? Like, what do we provide, what understand the why, and then what do we do now? In that idea of what do we do now, is there any standard there, or that's really just individual for the people that are working together?
Yeah, no, I think the what do we do now is the best part, because you can create it yourself. So the an easy way of understanding it is, okay, you've got a crosswalk. You're nervous about crossing the street. You realize, wait, my heart's beating a little bit. And then you go, oh, I have a feeling here. That's step one. Step two is, my feeling is that I'm nervous about crossing the street. Step three would be, what am I going to do about it? So I'm not going to cross the street at all today. I'll wait for another day. I'm going to cross the street, but I'm going to be super cautious and look both ways and wait a really long time. Or or you get to choose. Or I'm going to go ask my mom and hold her hand before I cross the street. Like, you get to choose what you do with that. And I think that can be super empowering for kids, because in that process, they get to have a lot of voice and choice. And then the step that goes along with that is, whatever decision you make it, and you're not allowed to think about it again until tomorrow, or until it pops up again. So I don't know if that answers your question. That's just a very small example of it. There's many, many more. As a parent, I struggle with my own anxiety with whatever. So I think about it, think about where the feeling's coming from, think about why it's happening, and then I make a plan. Because in reality, anxiety and the feelings that anxiety produces is supposed to incite a fight or a flight response. So you have an immediate action. You're not supposed to be sitting and stewing in anxiety for long periods of time. That's unhealthy for your body. Like, that's the cortisol is like running through, and it's not good. And so you really want to give yourself a way out, whatever it is. And then, nope, we're not doing it. We're not thinking about this. We're not worrying about it. We're not stewing on it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So the choice that you give kids, again, this is really developmental, may, you want to give them something you feel comfortable, whatever they choose, right? You don't want to give them a choice that you're not going to be happy with. And there are some hard and fast rules, like, no, you can't hit. Yes, you have to go to school. Yes, you have to do your homework. But the feeling they have, or the choices that they have within that, might be, I'm going to quickly do my math homework and then be done with it and not think about it anymore. Or I'm going to have a snack and then I'm going to do my math homework. It's more about, how are they going to tackle that particular problem versus, no, we're not going to do it at all.
Those are really helpful guidelines. And I wonder, are these the types of things that you share too? You have this community, youhaveavillage.com. And are these the types of things that you share inside of that community? Or tell us a little bit about that, what it looks like.
Yeah. So You Have a Village is my sort of like pet mission project. I was describing it to you earlier. I am a therapist, but I just really struggle with how my husband says I'm like the person that would throw every starfish back in the ocean all the time. And I just can't help every single human. So, and in the last company that I worked at, I talked to parents around the globe. And what I found is that, mostly with parents with kids who have emotional regulation issues. And what I found is that every single parent struggles, and in fact, I would say 90% of my calls, parents were crying, and they would say, I have no place to go. I don't know who to talk to. I feel ashamed about this. I don't want to out my kid, because if I talk about this on social media or something, maybe they can't get into college. I have no idea what to do, and I have no idea where to go. And so it sort of made me think, like, if all these parents feel this way, they're not really alone. They're not, we got to figure out a way to get them together and make them realize that there's support for them. So, my colleague and I started this company called You Have a Village, and it basically offers parent support in groups. We have like multiple groups throughout the week, and parents can come to as many as they want. And then there's a chat forum too, and it's all moderated by myself or a clinician. And basically, I think I was describing to you before, I have like last night we had a parent who was really struggling, and she just posted what was going on, and she had a whole bunch of parents who were helping her, and then myself and my colleague were helping her. And so she got real-time support, where I think that's really hard for parents, is that, if you wait until your family therapy session and that problem might be gone, how do you recreate, but how do you get the help that you need in the moment? So yeah, that's youhaveavillage.com, and that's our mission, is to try to figure out how to help parents who are struggling and feel really alone in helping their kid. And we talk a lot about what I was just talking about, like interventions, techniques to use, diagnostic stuff, which I know you mention a lot with your members, like I'm feeling this or I'm seeing this. We talk about the language to use with doctors, with therapists, how to get a therapist, how to get, maybe a neuropsych consult if you need it, if you don't need it, whether or not maybe you need an OT or things like that. Those are frequent topics of conversation for us. We also have some groups for kids, for parents with kids who are older, who have disordered eating or transition or struggles transitioning to college, that type of thing. So yeah, that's my baby sort of mission pet project, to just try to figure out how to help. I feel like if we help parents, we end up ultimately helping kids. And yeah,
Ultimately helping the next generation as well, really. That's what
I hope so. I think we've really have, I think, globally an emotional regulation problem, and certainly in America. Um, we as a society really, we spend a lot of time talking about math and science. We spend very little time talking about emotions and how to regulate them. And I think um, it's like we need to. It's time.
yeah, absolutely. Time for an emotionally healthy world.
Yeah.
So that is an amazing mission. And I love what you're doing, because I do feel like there's many people out there who could be supported by that model, and getting support in the moment is incredibly valuable. So thank you for that project and the work that you do. And that is found at youhaveavillage.com, correct?
Yes. Yep.
Awesome. Well, any other thoughts that you'd like to add?
I just think it's important for parents to know that you're not alone, and that I know sometimes when you see your kid struggle, it's the most painful thing in the world. And I think I just, I just, it's important for parents to know when they're in that struggle that um, there are a lot of other parents like you, and there are a lot of people like me who want to support you, and that sometimes the best thing you can do is just take a step and reach out. Because if you feel alone and you don't take that step, your kid is really going to feel alone, because you're going to feel helpless and alone, and your kid's going to feel that helpless and alone. And so don't hesitate to reach out. I know it can feel shameful, or you can feel like, oh, I've got this, I'm fine. But I'm just shocked by how many people in our community have said, wow, I cannot believe how much better I feel just now, that just even talking about this has made me feel better. So I think that's, it's okay. It's okay to get help.
Great advice. And thank you for all your thoughts and everything you've shared here today, Dr. White. And encourage everybody to go check out youhaveavillage.com. Thank you.
Bye. Have a good day.